What if the very people smiling at you were weaving invisible strings to control your mind? Today, we'll expose the subtle tactics manipulators use and unveil 7 genius ways to turn their own game against them, using the wisdom of Niccolò Machiavelli himself. They say manipulators control others through words and charm, but that's only the surface. What truly fuels manipulation is power, and power, my friend, is the oldest currency known to mankind. It existed long before money, long before politics, and long before morality. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this truth better than anyone. He knew that behind every smile lies a motive, and behind every gesture of kindness, there is often a calculation. When you deal with a manipulator, you are not dealing with a person, you are engaging in a silent war of influence. They are not trying to hurt you out of cruelty. They are trying to control you, because control gives them certainty, importance, and safety. They manipulate not because they are strong, but because they fear losing power. That fear drives them to create invisible strings that they can pull whenever they wish. And unless you recognize the game, you'll dance to their tune without even realizing it. Power, as Machiavelli taught, is neither good nor evil, it simply is. It is a force neutral like fire. It can warm a home or burn it to ashes. The manipulator understands this instinctively. They use power the way a spider spins a web naturally, efficiently, and with patience. But you, the one seeking wisdom, must learn not to fear the web, but to study it. Every thread reveals the pattern of control. Now, let us unmask how they play this game. A manipulator begins by testing your boundaries. They'll use subtle tactics, a small favor, a compliment, a harmless question to gauge your response. If you comply too easily, they see an opening. If you seek their approval, they tighten the strings. It begins small, but soon you'll find yourself explaining your actions, defending your choices, or feeling guilty for saying no. This is not coincidence, it is design. Machiavelli would tell you, never play the fool in the court of power. You must watch how people react when they are denied what they want. That moment reveals their true intent. A manipulator who smiles at your refusal is harmless. One who turns cold or guilt-ridden is showing their weapon. Remember, manipulation always hides behind the illusion of goodwill. It masquerades as empathy, loyalty, even love. But its goal is the same: to control your will through your emotions. So how do you outsmart them? You must begin by redefining your relationship with power itself. Most people fear it. They associate power with corruption, with domination, with tyranny, but in truth, power is simply influence over outcomes. The manipulator wins because you refuse to play. You tell yourself you are too kind or too moral to think about power, and that's exactly what gives them the advantage. Machiavelli once observed that those who reject power are ruled by those who embrace it. To outsmart a manipulator, you must not reject power, you must claim it. Quietly, intelligently. You must learn to move through social dynamics like a chess master. Every word, every pause, every silence a move. The manipulator plays to win your trust. You play to understand their pattern. Power begins with awareness. When you see manipulation as strategy instead of emotion, you disarm its effect. You stop reacting and start reading. You begin to notice how people use guilt as a leash, flattery as bait, and pity as a chain. The manipulator's charm no longer enchants you, it becomes data. Their anger no longer shakes you, it becomes confirmation. You learn to see through them without revealing that you see. In the Machiavellian sense, this is not cruelty, it is intelligence. The wise person does not strike first, but he always anticipates the strike. He understands that power is not about aggression, but about positioning. A manipulator may appear to hold power in a room, but in truth, the one who observes quietly holds the real authority. Because while they play for control, you play for understanding. And understanding is the ultimate weapon. The game of power is subtle. It does not shout. It whispers. It thrives in conversation, in emotion, in silence. It is a dance between perception and persuasion. Manipulators often think they are leading, but a true Machiavellian learns to let them dance ahead, only to guide the rhythm. From behind, you control by yielding, you dominate by observing, you influence by revealing nothing. To master this game, you must first conquer your own emotions. Manipulators sense weakness the way a wolf senses fear. If you need validation, they'll feed it to you until you depend on it. If you crave approval, they'll offer it until you lose your autonomy. Therefore, you must become self-contained. Praise should not lift you. Criticism should not shake you. This emotional independence is what terrifies manipulators most because they cannot control what they cannot move. When you enter the realm of power with a calm mind and a steady heart, you become unshakable. And from that stillness, you can observe the manipulator's game unfold like a play you've already read. You'll notice when they mirror your body language to build trust. You'll notice when they offer you sympathy to lower your guard. You'll see when they shift blame subtly to make you question yourself. And instead of reacting, you will simply note. Each move adds to your understanding. Each silence deepens your control. Power, therefore, is not about domination. It is about perception. It is the quiet confidence that no one can deceive you without your consent. The manipulator operates in darkness, but when you illuminate their tactics with awareness, they lose their edge. They thrive on ignorance. They starve on observation. And so, as Machiavelli would whisper through the corridors of history, to understand the power game is to understand human nature itself. Every manipulator wages war not with weapons, but with the human mind. They do not conquer cities, they conquer confidence. They do not destroy armies, they destroy certainty. This is the battlefield of psychological warfare, where the manipulator's victory depends not on truth, but on perception. And the one who understands perception commands the entire field. Niccolò Machiavelli once wrote that wars are not won by strength alone, but by strategy, by knowing the enemy's thoughts before he moves. The manipulator lives by this same principle. They watch, they listen, they measure. They do not attack head-on, they infiltrate quietly. They disguise their ambition beneath charm, their insecurity beneath kindness, and their schemes beneath concern. Every word they speak is a probe, every compliment a test, every apology a move on the board. Psychological warfare begins with one simple mission: to make you doubt your own mind. Because once you begin to question your own perception, they no longer need to fight. You'll hand them the sword yourself. They plant seeds of confusion gently, strategically. They'll say things like, "I didn't mean it that way, you're just too sensitive," or "I think you're overreacting." At first, you defend yourself. Then, slowly, you begin to question yourself. And that's when the real war begins, not between you and them, but between you and your own thoughts. Machiavelli would remind you, he who controls belief controls behavior. And this is the manipulator's ultimate goal: to control what you believe about yourself. Because if they can twist your perception of reality, they no longer need to convince you of anything. You will convince yourself. They create a fog of uncertainty, where truth and falsehood blur, where guilt and loyalty intertwine, where you are too disoriented to see that you are being controlled. This is not accidental. It is a design. Manipulators understand that the human mind seeks consistency, approval, and belonging. They weaponize these desires. They'll reward you with warmth when you comply and withdraw affection when you resist. They'll make you feel seen when you obey and invisible when you challenge them. It is a cycle of psychological conditioning, the same method used to train soldiers, tame animals, to shape minds, and the most dangerous part, it feels emotional, not strategic. To outsmart a manipulator, you must first stop playing emotionally. The manipulator wins when you fight from your heart. They lose when you think with your head. This is why Machiavelli taught rulers to observe men as they are, not as they appear. You must detach from the charm and focus on the structure of the game. Every manipulator has a pattern, a rhythm of influence. When they sense you slipping away, they soften. When you trust again, they tighten their hold. Once you see the pattern, you break their spell. Psychological warfare relies on reaction. The manipulator provokes, you react, and in your reaction they find power. They do not care whether you're angry or apologetic, both give them control. What confuses and defeats them most is indifference. When you stop reacting, they lose their map. They cannot navigate your silence. You turn the battlefield into fog for them, just as they once did for you. That is when the balance shifts. But make no mistake, detachment is not coldness. It is discipline. Machiavelli advised princes to appear compassionate while thinking rationally. You must master this same art. Let the manipulator believe you are swayed by emotion, while your mind remains untouched. Speak gently, but calculate internally. Smile, but observe. Let them think they have your attention while you collect information. Because in psychological warfare, the one who sees more, not the one who feels more, always wins. Every manipulator operates from weakness. Their need for control reveals their lack of stability. They do not manipulate because they are superior. They manipulate because they are afraid of losing influence. You must learn to read this fear beneath their performance. Watch their eyes when you disagree. Notice how they change tone when you stop defending yourself. The moment you stop giving them emotional energy, you expose the fear that drives them. That is when they falter. Machiavelli would tell you that knowledge of human nature is the foundation of all power. To understand people's fears, desires, and insecurities is to see the strings that move them. The manipulator plays those strings instinctively. But when you begin to recognize the same patterns, when you start to predict their tactics, you move from prey to strategist. You no longer react, you anticipate. And anticipation is the highest form of control. This war is silent. It happens in conversations, in tone, in timing. The manipulator thrives when you forget it's even a war. They will convince you that they are helping you, protecting you, guiding you, while every move tightens your dependence. This is why you must stay conscious. You must remember that every human interaction has power dynamics hidden beneath it. Those who are unaware are controlled. Those who are aware cannot be. To win in psychological warfare, you must master two opposing states, empathy and detachment. You must understand how others feel, but never let it dictate your response. You must listen deeply, but remain emotionally distant. You must give the illusion of vulnerability without ever surrendering your core. Machiavelli called this the dual armor of the fox, and the lion cunning to detect traps, strength to resist them. In the manipulator's game, your mind is both the target and the weapon. If they can make you doubt yourself, they've already won half the battle. So you must train your mind to question not your worth, but their motives. When you hear flattery, ask, why now? When you receive guilt, ask, what purpose does this serve? Each question pulls the veil tighter around their lies. The manipulator survives through confusion. Your clarity is their downfall. The mind is the true battlefield of all power struggles. The manipulator may control others through charm, deceit, or intimidation, but the one who understands psychology at its root will always see through illusion. Because in this invisible war of minds, victory belongs to the one who keeps their perception clean, their thoughts sharp, and their emotions untouchable. In the grand game of manipulation, emotion is the battlefield and reaction is the weapon. Manipulators understand this with exquisite precision. They know that logic can resist, but emotion can be persuaded, provoked, and broken. They know that one moment of anger, guilt, or fear can open doors that reason would keep locked. This is why every manipulator's first strategy is not to change your mind, but to control your feelings. If they can make you feel confused, ashamed, or defensive, they can control the direction of your thoughts. Machiavelli once wrote that men are governed more by their passions than by reason, and that the wise ruler is the one who can control his emotions while guiding those of others. The same truth applies in personal power. Emotional detachment is not coldness, it is command. It is the art of mastering your internal world so completely that no one can shake it from the outside. Because the manipulator's greatest fear is not confrontation. It is indifference. Think about it, manipulators feed on reaction. If you become angry, they know which buttons to press. If you become defensive, they know where your insecurities lie. If you become guilty, they know how to bind you in silence. They do not need to overpower you physically. They only need to provoke you emotionally. You reveal your weaknesses in your reactions. You tell them exactly what to use against you. That is why emotional detachment is not just a tool of survival, it is your shield. The moment you stop reacting, the manipulator loses control of the narrative. Your silence becomes unpredictable. Your calm becomes unsettling. They throw words like arrows, but you do not flinch. And in that stillness, you reclaim power. Because in psychological warfare, whoever controls their emotions controls the pace of the game. The manipulator tries to make you respond. The Machiavellian mind makes them wait. Emotional detachment begins with self-awareness. You must know your triggers, what words make you defensive, what tone makes you anxious, what behavior makes you feel guilty. These are the levers manipulators pull. They observe how you respond under pressure, how quickly you justify yourself, how easily you explain your intentions. Each emotional reaction gives them data. So you must begin to notice your own emotional impulses before they do. When you feel that rush of anger or the sting of guilt, pause. Breathe. Do not explain. Do not defend. Do not retaliate. Simply observe the feeling. Machiavelli understood that power belongs to the one who appears unmoved. The ruler who panics loses the throne. The man who stays composed commands the court. Likewise, when you remain emotionally still, you become unreadable. And when you are unreadable, you are unmanipulable. The manipulator's power depends entirely on your transparency, on their ability to predict your reaction. By detaching, you take that map away. They become lost in their own tactics. However, detachment does not mean apathy. You do not suppress emotion, you manage it. The goal is not to feel nothing, but to feel without showing. Like a general who knows the value of disguise, you learn to conceal your inner movements. You may feel anger, but you channel it into analysis. You may feel sadness, but you convert it into understanding. The manipulator cannot weaponize what they cannot see. In conversation, this skill becomes art. When someone tries to guilt trip you, you neither argue nor apologize unnecessarily. You listen quietly, nod, and respond with measured calm. When someone provokes you to anger, you do not raise your voice, you lower it. Calmness confuses those who expect chaos. Your stillness becomes your strategy. It makes others reveal more while you reveal less. This is the subtle magic of emotional detachment. It disarms aggression and exposes intention. Machiavelli taught that the appearance of control is often more important than control itself. The manipulator seeks emotional dominance. They want to make you feel powerless. But when you project calm, even when shaken, you reverse the illusion. You make them question their influence. They begin to wonder if you see through them, and that uncertainty weakens their confidence. The manipulator, after all, thrives on predictability. When you no longer respond as expected, they lose rhythm, and their performance falters. There's a moment in every manipulation when emotion becomes the lever, the point where they either pull you in deeper or lose their hold completely. That moment happens when they say something designed to trigger you, an insult masked as concern, a compliment laced with control, or a guilt-soaked reminder of what you owe them. If you react emotionally, they tighten the net. But if you remain still, they lose leverage. Your calm forces them to reveal more of their intent. Their frustration betrays them, and slowly, they expose their own game. To master detachment is to master delay. You do not respond instantly, you allow silence to stretch. Every pause you take weakens the manipulator's timing. Silence is not absence, it is dominance. It signals that you are in control of your own emotions, and by extension, the conversation. The manipulator becomes uncomfortable with that power vacuum. They will fill it with over-explanation, justification, or guilt, all of which reveal their motive more clearly. In truth, emotional detachment is not just defense, it's psychological offense. By remaining calm, you turn their tactics against them. Their attempt to provoke becomes evidence. Their manipulation becomes transparent, and the more they reveal, the less power they have. Machiavelli would call this winning without battle, conquering through composure. But to reach this level, you must train your mind to see emotion as energy, not truth. Feelings can be real, but not always reliable. The manipulator knows this. They exploit the gap between what you feel and what is fact. When you detach, you close that gap. You no longer take every emotion as a command. You feel, you analyze, and then you choose. That is real power, the power of choice amid chaos. The manipulator thrives in emotional storms, where confusion clouds reason. But when you become the calm in that storm, everything changes. They cannot twist your feelings, they cannot predict your moves, they cannot shake your focus. You become like the silent strategist Machiavelli described, one who rules not by noise, but by stillness, not by passion, but by control. In every human interaction, someone leads and someone follows, but the manipulator wants you to believe that you are equals while they quietly guide your choices. This is not coincidence. It is strategy. Their control is never loud. It is subtle, persuasive, wrapped in the illusion of friendship, love, or collaboration. They do not demand authority. They earn it through charm and psychological leverage. Yet what they cannot anticipate is the presence of someone who understands the deeper art of control, the one Machiavelli called the calculating mind. The thinker who leads by appearing to follow. This is the principle of calculated dominance, to reclaim control not by confrontation, but by quiet mastery. Machiavelli taught that power is best maintained not through constant aggression, but through calculated restraint. The most effective rulers, he said, are those who appear just, humble, and patient while secretly directing the flow of events. The same principle applies in personal relationships and social power dynamics. A manipulator thrives on confrontation because it confirms their influence. But the moment you refuse to play the emotional game and instead steer outcomes with precision, you shift from pawn to strategist. You no longer fight for control, you possess it. Calculated dominance begins with observation. Before you can direct the game, you must understand the board. The manipulator's greatest asset is their ability to read people quickly. They sense insecurity, eagerness, or pride, and they use it as leverage. To counter them, you must slow the tempo. Do not reveal your intentions too early. Let them underestimate you. Let them believe you are naive, agreeable, or unaware. Machiavelli would call this the art of strategic weakness, allowing the enemy to grow comfortable before you redirect their path. Once you understand their rhythm, you begin to influence it. The manipulator thrives when you react. They falter when you set the pace. You guide the conversation subtly, redirecting their tactics with calm precision. When they use flattery to gain favor, you acknowledge it politely but offer no emotional reward. When they provoke you, you respond with logic instead of anger. When they push for information, you answer selectively, giving the illusion of openness while revealing nothing of value. This is dominance disguised as cooperation. The essence of calculated dominance is control through subtlety. You do not shout, you guide. You do not confront, you lead by redirection. The manipulator expects drama. Instead, you give them stillness. They expect defense. You give them curiosity. When they try to corner you, you respond with questions that make them explain themselves. And the more they explain, the more they expose their true intentions. Machiavelli said that men reveal themselves more through their attempts to hide than through their honesty. In forcing them to talk, you hold the mirror up to their game. To master this, you must learn the art of delayed response. Every manipulator thrives on immediacy. They rely on quick emotions and impulsive reactions. But when you pause, when you think before speaking, you disarm them. Your delay creates uncertainty. They begin to wonder what you are planning, what you are thinking, and in that uncertainty, their confidence erodes. You take control of the tempo and therefore of the entire interaction. The calm, deliberate response becomes your most powerful weapon. Calculated dominance also requires understanding when to appear weak. Machiavelli advised rulers to seem humble when strength would provoke resistance. In dealing with manipulators, this means occasionally allowing them to feel superior. Let them believe they have influence over you, that their charm is working. It feeds their ego and lowers their guard. While they are celebrating their illusion of control, you are quietly steering the outcome in your favor. You do not resist openly, you redirect invisibly. The manipulator cannot fight what they do not perceive. Imagine a chess game where your opponent believes they are leading, yet every move they make draws them closer to defeat. That is the nature of calculated dominance. You do not need to destroy the manipulator. You let them destroy their own position by following your invisible guidance. They speak, you listen. They push, you yield slightly. They advance, you retreat just enough to control distance. Eventually, they find themselves isolated, confused by how their influence slipped away without conflict. True dominance is not about overpowering others. It is about commanding the frame of interaction. The manipulator wants to set the rules of engagement, emotional appeal, guilt, or charm. But when you define the terms, when you decide the tone, the pace, and the focus, they are forced to adapt to your structure. You might ask calm, probing questions like, "Why do you feel that way?" Or "What made you think that?" Such questions seem harmless but force the manipulator into rational terrain where emotion loses power. They must now defend logic instead of manipulating feelings, and logic is not their stronghold. Machiavelli observed that most men prefer appearance to reality. The manipulator is no exception. They live for perception. So you must use appearance strategically. You appear agreeable but are analyzing. You appear compliant but are calculating. You appear silent but are planning your next move. Every gesture becomes deliberate. Every silence becomes intentional. And while they play for approval, you play for position. The difference between reaction and calculation is the difference between being ruled and ruling unseen. To practice calculated dominance, you must also master detachment from ego. The manipulator provokes pride to make you overreact, to make you defend your intelligence, your value, your reputation. But when you no longer seek validation, their power over you dissolves. You no longer need to prove yourself. You simply know. This calm confidence unnerves them. It creates a silent imbalance. They talk more. They reveal more. They justify more while you listen with a mind as sharp as a blade. The quiet strategist never announces power. He simply exercises it through awareness and patience. Every manipulator relies on confusion to maintain dominance. But when you see clearly, when you measure every move before making it, you become the invisible ruler of the exchange. Machiavelli would tell you that real control is never declared. It is felt by those who cannot explain why they feel smaller in your presence. That is the art of calculated dominance. Silent control disguised as calm cooperation, invisible influence hidden beneath composure, and mastery that speaks only through outcome. In the grand theater of human nature, manipulation is not an exception. It is the rule quietly woven through conversation, emotion, and ambition. Every interaction holds a balance of power, whether spoken or unseen. Some will seek to control through deceit, others through persuasion. But the wise, the truly Machiavellian mind understands that power is never about domination. It is about perception, patience, and control of the self. To outsmart manipulators, you do not fight them, you understand them. You learn to see their tactics not as attacks, but as patterns. You stop reacting, and you start reading. You master the art of emotional detachment, turning your silence into strength. You transform from participant to observer, from target to tactician. And once you understand their motives, you no longer fear their moves. Machiavelli taught that the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Likewise, the strength of your mind is reflected in how easily you are swayed by others. When you learn to keep your thoughts steady while others manipulate emotion, when you learn to lead quietly while others play loud games of deceit, you rise above the noise. You become untouchable. This is not the path of cruelty, it is the path of mastery. To see clearly when others deceive, to remain calm when others provoke, to direct outcomes without ever revealing your strategy, that is true intelligence. That is the wisdom of Machiavelli reborn for the modern world. So remember, manipulators will always exist. They whisper, they flatter, they provoke, but none of it can move the one who governs himself. Power does not belong to those who seek to control others. It belongs to the one who controls his own mind. The manipulator may play the game, but the Machiavellian thinker writes the rules.